Where is it?
In a bank?
In a bank? You're getting pretty ambitious, aren't you? I mean, to think you can blow a bank and get away with it.
It's behind enemy lines.
Behind enemy lines.
Guaranteed by the taxpayer.
It could be the perfect crime.
While foreign banks are buying up American assets, the federal government is bailing out foreign banks. The Treasury Department this weekend said foreign banks will be included in the government's proposed massive $700 billion bailout plan. A great idea. What a brilliant, brilliant piece of economic leadership on the part of the economic team of this administration. Bailing out foreign banks. What will they think of next?
Well, this Treasury Department is filled with incompetence. They have stopped in over 1,500 reviews, only one sale to foreign owners' American assets. But a voting machine company, critical to this country's election count, and they can't tell you whether or not the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States reviewed it or not?
They have no answer for us, and
these are the most arrogant, incompetent, bureaucratic idiots. I mean, the Treasury Department is trying to move ahead of a number of other departments in that category.
It's incomprehensible.
The point is, there are major and sophisticated and ongoing attempts to undermine our democracy, to violate your right to vote. And they must be exposed. They must be stopped. And we need a government under enough pressure to do something about it if we're serious about maintaining a healthy civic society.
But the voter fraud lie lives on.
We're not going to lose. The only way we can lose is if cheating goes on.
Voter fraud conspiracy theories have been around long before Donald Trump.
In America, George W. Bush was encouraged that Putin was a young leader focused on Russia's future, not its past. But the former spy was not what he seemed.
When Putin got into power, it's not just one KGB officer who is getting into power. It is a corporation which is taking over. KGB came into power in Russia. That was a huge mistake.
There's a report the Federal Reserve is refusing to identify recipients of almost like $2 trillion in emergency loans to banks, other institutions. When this was announced and everyone voted on it, there are all these promises about transparency. What happened to that?
Truly remarkable story. When you take all the programs, there are 15 of them now, including the bailout, that have been designed to give money to companies and banks. There has been more than $2 trillion given over so far. One of our colleagues over at Bloomberg News wanted to find out what the collateral is that these banks have been putting up for those loans. The Treasury and the Fed refused to answer under a Freedom of Information Act, so Bloomberg has sued the federal government to get that information. Believe it or not, Anderson, after all of this, after all the taxpayer money that's gone into this, they are not telling us what the collateral is that they're putting up for the loan. Some people say it's academic at this point because we've approved it and we basically said whatever they put up, we're giving them the money anyway. But the fact that they won't answer to taxpayers goes against the spirit of what we thought was being discussed when that bailout was being debated, Anderson.
Yeah, well, why should anybody trust them at this point? It's ridiculous. Allie, thanks.
So the bailout did something, but not what we needed it to do. It didn't work. It didn't do what justified the money in the first place. It seems like every day we learn a new way that this bailout fails in its basic purpose. Like in the Iraq War fiasco, it's not like we weren't warned. There were those who knew this would happen, who publicly predicted exactly the sort of shortcomings that seemed to surprise Congress at every turn. So I feel like the American people got punked. Do you think that we got punked?
I think we did get punked in a lot of ways. There was certainly not as huge a crisis as everyone was talking about, to the point where we needed to cut $1 trillion check to Wall Street with almost no oversight whatsoever.
Well, what should have been done?
Well, I think what we need first and foremost is better oversight, and the GAO is telling us that there is no oversight of this bailout. I think what we needed at the beginning was Congress moving much more slowly, appropriating, let's say, $50 billion or $100 billion at a time, and putting a lot of money into economic stimulus, which we still haven't gotten. We're still waiting for economic stimulus for Main Street. You know, the best way to fix the economy is, fix the economy.
Look, what does a capitalist do? Let me ask you that, Mike. Huh? Tell me. I mean, what does he make besides money? I don't know what he makes. The workers do all the work, don't they? Well, what if they got organized? I mean all the workers, not just the plumbers and the carpenters and the goddamn cigar makers, but all of them, all over the world, not in just one country or another. Give them a beer, will you? What if they all got organized? Don't you think they could change society overnight? They could make it anything they wanted.
Can I tap you for $5 and flat?
I mean, what are the death squads but the brainchild of the CIA? But you'll run with them because they're anti-Moscow.
Bullshit.
You let them close down the universities. You let them wipe out the best minds in the country. You let them kill whoever they want. You let them wipe out the Catholic Church, and you let them do it all because they aren't commies. And that, Colonel, is bullshit. You created Major Frankenstein.
We can control him.
Yeah, well, like you control the major Marxism.
Look who's here.
Chile, Guatemala.
You lose your sea legs yet?
Argentina.
What about Pol Pot and Castro? Are they any better?
What about Pol Pot and Castro?
Yeah.
I don't know if they're better. All I know is that some campesino who can't read or write or feed his own family has to watch his kid die of malnutrition. Do you think he gives a shit about Marxism or capitalism?
It was that kind of crap thinking that lost us Vietnam, this guilt shit. You liberal assholes. What the hell do you think the KGB's doing, huh?
History has shown that the greater threat to economic prosperity is not too little government involvement in the market, it is too much government involvement in the market. We saw this in the case of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Because these firms were chartered by the United States Congress, many believe they were backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government.
Guaranteed by the taxpayer.
Investors put huge amounts of money into Fannie and Freddie,
Guaranteed by the
which
taxpayer.
they used to build up irresponsibly large portfolios of mortgage-backed securities.
Guaranteed by the taxpayer.
And when the housing market declined, these securities, of course, plummeted in value.
Guaranteed by the taxpayer.
It took a taxpayer-funded rescue to keep Fannie and Freddie from collapsing in a way that would have devastated the global financial system. And there's a clear lesson.
It's a perfect crime.
Our aim should not be more government. It should be smarter government. All this leads to the most important principle that should guide our work. While reforms in the financial sector are essential, the long-term solution to today's problems is sustained economic growth. And the surest path to that growth is free markets and free people.
Was negotiating for, maybe 40 cents on the dollar to entities like Goldman Sachs. And so when the Fed comes in and says, no, pay back 100% with taxpayer money, how much is the American taxpayer out here?
This is a decisive moment for the global economy. In the wake of the financial crisis, voices from the left and right are equating the free enterprise system with greed and exploitation and failure.
I want to be roused by a speech on capitalism.
Yes.
But I am struck deeply by the irony here, where the president, who has just been involved in one of the greatest involvements of government in our time, in the post-war era, gets up and makes a rousing speech on capitalism and then says he's a free market guy, but not when staring down a financial meltdown. Well, what does that mean? Doesn't answer the essential question we're all seeking right now, which is where did the free market go wrong here? Blaming Fannie and Freddie is not sufficient to really tell us what went wrong here and intellectually guide us where we need to go as a free market nation.
A few years ago, I bought this book. It's called Ponzi Scheme. It's a story of Charles Ponzi, who did this in the 20s. And I just picked it up again today because of this. And I should read to you. They were talking about Charles Ponzi. And he said Ponzi may have been a charlatan, but he was also a wonderfully likable man. His intentions were noble. His manners impeccable. His sales pitch enchanting. It's a rob Peter to pay Paul kind of thing. And it's based on confidence. It's based on people continuing to give you money so that you can keep it going. Let me show you how this works. Here's Madoff right in the middle. Now, what would happen is he would get investors and he would promise them a return, let's say 10%. Now, in order to pay that 10%, he'd have to get new investors in, but in the end, that is what a Ponzi scheme is. You're taking one person's money to pay someone else, and they all think that their money is being invested. They think they're getting real money from investments, and these guys think their money is being invested.
And Allie, Madoff claims he acted alone in this scheme, but reality check this for us, because it seems like there is no way he could have done this by himself.
Well, again, like Charles Ponzi, it's about confidence. I've spoken to people who knew Madoff. They thought he was a very agreeable guy, a very friendly guy. They weren't entirely sure how he was making these consistent returns.
Do you not understand who he was?
I think we're all beginning to understand exactly who your father is, Mr. Madoff.
He wasn't just my father.
Yeah, he was fucking idolized. We're talking about a man who created the modern market as we know it. He created NASDAQ. He was chairman of NASDAQ. He was chairman of the National Securities Clearing Corporation, chairman of the International Securities Clearing Corporation, chairman of the National Association of Securities Dealers, which was FINRA before FINRA fucking existed, chairman of the SIA Trading Committee.
Okay, we understand your point, sir.
I don't think you do. Chairman of the National Business Conduct Committee, member of the SIA Federal Regulation Committee, chairman of the NASD Small Order Execution Committee. I mean, you're asking me how I didn't know? Well, I'm asking you. You're the FBI, you're the SEC. You investigated him before, so I'm asking you. How the fuck did you not know?
Sir, we are not the focus here. You are.
This elaborate Ponzi scheme fell through the cracks of our regulatory system. From what we have all learned in the press, it now appears that regulators should have detected the Madoff wrongdoing earlier because of red flags raised by others.
Bernard Madoff's $50 billion Ponzi scheme. Fraud investigator Harry Markopoulos testified he warned the SEC about Madoff's scheme for more than a decade. Markopoulos blasted the SEC staff, saying it was neither willing nor capable of figuring out what Madoff was really doing.
It seems to me a private, with all of your investigators and all of your agency and everything that you all described, one guy with a few friends and helpers discovered this thing nearly a decade ago, led you to this pile of dung that is Bernie Madoff, and stuck your nose in it, and you couldn't figure it out.
Go into his operation, take the roadmap I gave them, take those 29 red flags, and say, let me talk to your derivatives trading staff, and they would not have found one single derivatives trader there, because the key mark of a Ponzi scheme is there is no underlying product or service. It's all a fraud. There's nothing underneath it. The emperor wears no clothes.
Right.
The other thing they could have done was go to the Chicago Board Options Exchange, where there's OEX Standard & Poor's 100 index options actually traded, and talk to the people trading them. Have you ever received an order from Mr. Madoff? And they would have told you he was a fraud.
Well, at this point, most people have seen that roadmap, that 19-page, that detailed tip that was given. It was just handed over to the SEC. A lot of people are wondering, how is it possible that regulators missed it? And that's what they're looking into, and that's what they'll continue to look into, and we'll keep looking into this as well.
I know you will. Big money has big power, that's for sure.
Oh,
Abby, thanks a lot.
Obviously, they complained to somebody who had no interest, because they found nothing wrong in a $50 billion scheme until the guy who did it confessed to it.
And I got no response back. At that point, I lost all confidence in the SEC.
Mr. Markopoulos, I would like to just say for the record that I see you as a modern-day Greek hero.